Good evening, everyone. Good to see everybody tonight.
Good evening, Ken.
We've got Dave with us and Mr. John Ringenbach, and as always, Dr. Ricks. And welcome everyone to episode 370, How to Be More Heroic Like Daniel. So, Dr. Ricks, if you would start us out, that would be wonderful.
Okay, the first groaner here is um, if money, if money is the root of all evil, why do they ask for it in every church? Of course, the truth is, it's the love of money that's the root of all evil. Anyway, fly in my soup. An atheist says to the waiter, "Why is this fly in my soup?" The waiter says, "The fly is praying." The atheist says, "Very, very funny. I can't eat this soup. It's got a fly in it. Take it back." The waiter says, "Yes, sir. The fly's prayers were answered." Okay, this one call happened at the wedding last night. At a wedding in a big auditorium, a big audience, the pastor asked if anyone had anything to say concerning the union of the bride and the groom. It was their time to stand up and talk or forever hold their peace. There was a moment of utter silence was broken when a young, beautiful woman carrying a child started walking toward the pastor slowly from the back. Everything quickly turned to chaos. The bride slapped the groom hard. The groom's mother fainted. The groomsmen started giving each other looks and wondering how best to help save the situation. The pastor asked the young woman as she got closer, "Can you tell us why you came forward? What do you have to say?" The young woman said, "We can't hear in the back." They just can't make any assumptions. Okay, today is how to be heroic like Daniel. And we know the story of Daniel, but like a lot of things in the Bible, if you dig in deeper, you can find lessons that are good for us even in today's world. And it also is one more opportunity to verify that all the Bible is inspired. Because there's still people run around saying, well, those Old Testament stories are cute for cute fairy tales, but don't take any of that stuff in the Old Testament too seriously, which is obviously wrong. But a lot of people don't really understand that because of, well, one or two particular commandments they want to get rid of, but you all know what they are. Anyway, Daniel's heroics have been inspiring people for over 2,000 years, and his victories made him stronger. Um, One of the things we learn about Daniel when you put all the details together that when the Babylonians first took siege of Jerusalem 605, they peeled away before they tore down the city, anything dangerous. They just took the best of the people hostage. And in a sense, this first wave of hostages was like the best, most faithful people of God were being taken to their place of safety. Because when they came back for the later sieges of Jerusalem, it was horrible. You don't even want to think about how horrible it was. Well, Daniel was taken in that first surrounding of Jerusalem to his place of safety because he had been a true, and probably his family, faithful worshiper of the true God. And you just sometimes forget that. That while the rest of Judah was going into great apostasy, not Daniel. And there were some people in those days who stayed faithful. And sometimes we tend to forget there's usually a remnant of people that always stay faithful. Anyway, let's go to Jeremiah 24:3, the first slide, please, Ken.
All right. And let's see here. And the Lord said to me, "What do you see, Jeremiah?" I said, "Figs, the good figs very good, and the bad figs very bad, so bad that they cannot be eaten." Then the word of the Lord came to me. Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, like these good figs, so I will regard as good the exiles from Judah, whom I have sent away from this place to the land of the Chaldeans. I will set my eyes upon them for good, and I will bring them back to this land, and I will build them up, and I will not tear them down. I will plant them and not uproot them.
You know, you would think 70 years of captivity would be a terrible thing, but actually, for those people that were faithful to God in the first wave, it was actually their population grew. They did all right economically, and we presume spiritually, and they were the ones that led the way to the exiles coming back to Jerusalem. One lesson I would take from that is that even if America goes down the rabbit hole to total decadence, those of us that remain faithful will be blessed and protected by God one way or another. Who would have thought being the first ones to be taken by Nebuchadnezzar would be the ones that were the safest? You would never have thought that, would you?
I don't know.
It reminds me of that one song I used to love called By the Waters of Babylon. You know, if my right hand forgets her skill, if I forget God. So in other words, those people, and that's one of the songs in the Bible, those people who first were loyal to God. They never wanted to forget God, even though they were in safety by the waters of Babylon. It's just an interesting way to look at it. And I think that a lot of us worry about the future. And I'm not saying we don't face some really bad trends, especially in education. They're teaching kids horrible stuff now. But if we remain faithful to God, God will take care of us. Any thoughts, David?
Well, yes, I'm just trying to unmute my mic. Being faithful to God, but we should be praying steadfast for discernment so we know what we're looking at, so we understand what the news is telling us, what all the commentators are telling us. We need to be able to discern the truth because we're in a time that the world's never seen with this information dump, like coming from so many different directions and being twisted so many ways. So I think that's to pray for discernment so that we can understand and be a little more prepared for whatever it is we're going to be looking at. Because as you mentioned, the school system, Kamala is talking about the amount of stuff they want to change is just volumes, but they want to do away with homeschooling. They want to find churches for meeting and all these things, all the things that make us America, So I think that we do need to be strong, especially now, and we do need to maintain a good, strong relationship with God. But we need to understand what's going on around us, and I think that is, as a group, we should pray for discernment.
Not just that, but I've seen a lot of more stuff pop up there from other religious groups, a lot of Sunday keeping groups thinking they have some revelation figured out. Don't chase every twig that someone puts out because they're all over the place right now. And if it isn't biblical, and if you don't research it and work it out, don't jump on it and share it to everybody else on the planet and get them involved in this twig that somebody's been looking at. If it doesn't fit what we already know is coming, don't assume it's true.
That's a good point. Any thoughts, John?
Oh, gee. No, there's just so much misinformation. I try to ignore most of it. Well, for the last several months, the news has just been deceitful. And it just, you didn't even want to pay attention to it.
Disinformation. I even think that I get the feeling, hurry up, Trump, and concede. And it just seems to me they're saying that too much. I don't know, it just makes me feel they have an agenda, and it's everywhere. The comedians and, well, at least a lot of places. Uh, like you say, John, there's so much disinformation. And actually they accuse people of what they do. Like this Swalwell is accusing Trump and others of being agents of foreign powers, when just a few years prior to that, the FBI told him that he was having an affair with a Chinese spy who had placed one of her other spies in his, what do they call them, congressional staff. As a matter of fact, he warned her the FBI was on her. She jumped on a plastic. And what I think is so interesting, he's accusing other people of doing what he did.
Yeah, I believe that's treason.
No,
to
it
do
is
that.
treason.
Right, and there's only one punishment for treason.
Exactly.
Be a Democrat.
But the point, but this notes, whatever they accuse you of is probably true of the people they support. It's just amazing how much disinformation is the exact opposite of what you think it is. It's the, what do you call it? The sneakiness of human nature.
Well, Satan's the most subtle of all the beasts. So if he's running things, it's going to be, except they're not subtle anymore. They're right in your face right now. So
yeah, it's out there. But God will help us face evil like he did Daniel. Now, let's read Revelation 3. I know this is not about Daniel, but it's about the end time. And we think this would apply to the end time church that's in the right spirit.
Behold, I will make those of the synagogue of Satan who say that they are Jews and are not, but lie. Behold, I will make them come and bow down before your feet and learn that I have loved you. Because you have kept my word of patient endurance, I will keep you from the hour of trial which is coming on the whole world to try those who dwell upon the earth. I am coming soon. Hold fast what you have so that no one may seize your crown.
First of all, remember, Christianity was considered a sect within Judaism. So when he says a synagogue of Satan, that's why it makes sense. Was considered a sect within Judaism. But that's one of the models of our church. Hold on to the end. Because I was telling somebody, we were just talking about falling away and all that. I said, well, the odds are we're not going to do anything crazy. We just have to hold on and not get distracted, discouraged, bitter, or all those other things that can make you fall away. Because sometimes, life is such, you don't always get what you want. Somebody offends you. You know how life is, or some seductive person comes along and works on you to pull you back into the world. So we just have to hang in there.
We've got to realize that Matthew 25, 50% of, in the end, of the church and of anybody will be prepared, and 50% is just going to be lost. And so we've got to work together in the church just to hold each other's hands up, help each other to endure to the end. Going to church is not about a sermon. There are some sermons are helpful, but it's about the fellowship and about finding somebody else going, hey, you look like me spiritually. You look like me. We get it. We know the thing where, sharpen iron sharpens iron. And that's, for me, having services and meeting like I do with Atlanta is so important to me. We are, and I've got more people. We have Frank and Rick over on the other side, but my son with his wife and daughter and his wife's grandparents are meeting with us. And then we're taking the Zoom recordings that we do and sending it to a friend of mine who listens to them and has a lot of questions. And so we're kind of growing a little bit. And then we have the ones who come here to the house and meet with us as well.
I probably should mention this. You can go there. icgarea4.com, and you can see all the sermons from our local church and and many from the St. Louis church where John is. You can watch them. But also the church as a whole, the Intercontinental Church of God, has a YouTube channel with a lot of sermons on it. I'm just saying that for people who are out there would like to find good
Well, hey,
material.
while we're doing this, I might as well tell everyone we have a new Intercontinental Church of God site. They uploaded the new site, I think, 2 days ago, or yesterday, or 2 days ago. 2 days ago, I think, recently. Um, so, and there's still a few things missing that Christina's working on to get back up and running, but she's getting it. And if you see something else that you used to like or used to use at the site, if you know Christina, you got her on Facebook, mention it to her. If you don't, get it to me, I'll get it to her. But there's a few things we found that are missing that she's working on. But it's got a whole new look. It looks a lot like the Garner Ted Armstrong website, but it's the same location, Intercontinental COG, I think Intercontinental, yeah, COG.org. You go there and you'll have the new look, and it looks real good, real modern, nice and smooth. And like I said, we're working, or she's working. I ain't do nothing, but she's working on getting it, updated with a few things that are like maybe some clean and unclean meats, the calendar, the events page, that kind of stuff. She's working back in.
And one thing to remember, all the extra material that's on the internet, and that's all great stuff. But there is no substitute for church fellowship. If you're able, even if you can only attend once or twice a month, that's better than nothing. But every week is the best. Come to church to be with the brethren. Plus, I actually think live sermons have a little more than things seen electronically. I know you could debate that, but that's just an opinion. I know for a fact, because my grandkids tell me this, school online, of course, one of the smartest of the bunch says it's a joke. They're not learning anything, but I want to quote her too literally, but I realize it's not quite the same. But I think they're cheating our kids out of their education by closing the schools. But that's I think, what can I tell you? I think bad politicians, bad teachers unions are cheating the kids, but it's a mess out there. It is a mess.
I think they're
What they're teaching them anyway.
right. Right. That's why we've got guys who, remember, people are voting now who were not alive when 9/11 happened.
That's true.
They are getting information about 9/11 happened because of us being capitalist and on and on and on. They don't know anything, and the churches aren't telling them anything, So I try to teach them in my school, but I've only got 15 kids, in my school. So I don't teach kids. I mean, I am teaching 15 of them, but the schools, the churches, there's just nothing teaching our kids history or anything conservative.
That's true. I don't know what I should have done when my kids were younger, but I wonder about homeschooling them. But well, it's all water under the bridge now. But it makes you wonder. It might have been better, and maybe just take some courses at the high school level, which they do allow in some states. You can mix it a little bit, but they're not learning, and I think they're not putting enough, my opinion, emphasis on true math, true reading, and true American history and classic literature. And they're putting a lot of other garbage in there, diluting the stuff they should be learning. But getting back to Daniel was a true believer. So when he went in 605 into captivity, they chose the best of those captives to go to the Babylonian Royal Academy. to like a 3-year program, to like a college degree. And actually, that was very smart of Nebuchadnezzar, because think about it, you get the smart, talented people to run the government bureaucracy for you, but because they are foreigners, they probably would have little support and been able to, they'd owe their total allegiance to him for their good jobs, and they'd have little chance of raising up a rebellion against him because they're not Chaldeans. You see the brilliance of it? You use the best talent, but they're not in a position to overthrow the government. Obviously, Daniel proved to be very talented. But Daniel, in advance, decided he would not, even though he was around paganism, he would not do certain things. He was not gonna, he was gonna remain loyal to God, even though he was a captive, the pagan empire. And I think the lesson for us to learn is sometimes you have to decide in advance, prepare yourself to be strong, so when the trial and the crisis comes, you'll be ready for it.
Good.
And again, that's why you go to church, so that you can make each other, cheer each other on and let them know they're not alone. People who are way out by themselves and they watch things, I'm glad they're doing that, but it's not the same as being in services. So, you get stronger by a stronger community.
By the way, if you're way out in some place like northern Canada or Montana in the woods and you can't practically go to church, I understand that. Do the best you can, but at least try to do things like, say, maybe go to the weekend of unleavened bread or Pentecost weekend, or certainly the Feast of Tabernacles. Just make plans to book yourself in a motel where the feast, I'd say close to the feast site. So you're with the people as much as possible. And that will help. And who knows? I've heard this happen a few times. You meet somebody else who's from a stranded area, not too far from you, and you all can get together. I mean, anything is possible, right?
Well, that, and you develop relationships so that you can do FaceTime communication. You can call each other. I have a number of people who I call and talk to and check on just to make sure they're okay. And that way, I mean, that's still better than nothing.
Yeah. And they do have, I guess you can get FaceTime on almost any smartphone now, right?
Yes.
So the technology's made it easier if you got a smartphone at least, and other things that
I
people are using,
upload
of course.
I upload our
Um,
sermon at church now because we have down south and Dayton. They don't always get to go to service. Occasionally, someone from our group doesn't make it for one reason or another. So I transmit ours on a cell phone using YouTube. So I stream us live up to YouTube through an app on my phone, and then it goes out, and I just share it on Facebook. So, and it stays out there if someone wants to watch it. It's simple. It's so easy. It's just so easy right now.
I'm not loving Zoom right now because I found out that that's owned by
Oh
Red
yeah.
China.
Oh yeah.
So we're making our payments to Red China to use Zoom. So
yeah,
maybe
I heard
looking
that
for an
too.
alternative.
And is it possible that they could be keeping all the data stored that if they
Of
need to
course.
look at it, they could?
And edit anything they want to edit. And they can make us look like we're saying stuff we're not saying.
So
So I'm going to rethink that. 9 months later. This little Indian girl goes in and she says, "Daddy, why do you name us? How do you name us?" He said, "Well, when your brother was born, I saw a running deer and I named him Running Deer. And today he runs really fast." And she said, "Why did you name me Spreading Eagle?" He goes, "Well, Kamala looks like this." That was a funny joke.
Moving right along.
Good sense of humor. Should I tell my joke about poisoning, or you think that might be too much for him? Maybe I'll tell.
It's got to
Yeah,
be better
maybe
than
I'll
that
tell
one.
it anyway.
Apparently, that one was a dud.
I'll tell the poisoning one. This guy said, "You must learn to be kind to your wife. Remember, if you get her upset, she could poison your food. You could drink it, die, and go to the hospital and be listed as a COVID casualty." Oh, well. Moving right along.
Well, Dr. Ricks, you and I should take our show on the road. That means anywhere but here, apparently.
Oh, speaking of show, Dave, we want to ask people to pray for Dave's eye retina. And Dave, would you like to give them us a little bit of what that doctor at the hospital in Tampa told you?
No, he didn't tell me much because he wasn't a retina specialist, but I may have a torn retina, and it's apparently an easy fix with the right guy. So it's possible I may have to have a little eye surgery, but I'm told it's outpatient. It's just in and out, and really no recovery time. So I just don't see very well right now out of my right eye.
So like looking out of cracked glass, you said?
Yeah, it's like looking through, not the whole eye, just the upper half of it or whatever. It's like looking through broken glass. So, but
Well, I
and
want
it's
everybody
not,
to pray. We got to keep David looking good.
it's not painful. Well, immediately when that happened, I told my other doctor. He asked if I was going to wear an eye patch, and I said I'm going to do whatever they tell me to do. And he goes, "So you're going to be called Master Pirate from now on." And then another guy, I guess they started a group thing because the other guy come on and said, "Well, he limps, that fits. Let's get him a pirate outfit and a parrot." And so they just piled on me pretty hard after sitting in the hospital all day. But I guess it was funny for them.
Yeah, there's some great pirate jokes, but I'm not going to tell one in the pirate and the parrot right now. We'll leave that for another day. I was going to use this example. There was, in the two big first carrier battles in World War II, one of America's carriers got actually sunk 3 times. What they did on carriers, they still do it, fire suppression exercises in advance of going into combat. They just do it over and over. Actually, the flagship, the Enterprise, got hit by some incendiary bombs, and the sailors put out the fire while they were still launching and landing fighters. Anyway, and the ship that got sunk, the 3rd time it really went down. The Japanese thought they sunk it. They towed it in. There's another carrier. They towed it in to Pearl while they're repairing it. While repairing it, they towed it out for the Battle of Midway. It got hit once. The Japanese thought they had sunk it. I guess they fought off the fire enough to keep launching fighters. And then I believe it was a submarine that put a torpedo that finally sent it to the bottom. But the point is, fire suppression exercises may have won the Battle of Midway and the Battle of Solomon Island. The American carriers were much better at putting out fires because they prepared in advance. I'm using an example. The fire that we get from a trial, if we prepare in advance ourselves spiritually, we will do much better. And I may not have gotten all the military details of the battle correct, but the basic principle is there, what I just said. A lot of ships survived it because they make those sailors work a lot in fighting fires.
And if you
under
think
deck.
of the trials as a dry run or a exercise to learn from, it makes them a lot more tolerable. It makes it easier to get through them. All the trials we go through, if we can just keep the one thing in mind that doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is making it to the end of this and the truth that God gave us. That's all that matters. Nothing else matters. Your car, your house, your whatever. What matters is getting through this and keeping your oil. Making sure you got plenty of oil. That's what matters. None of it matters but that.
I tell everyone, if you can remove the emotion, like it hurts right now, but if you can get past that, remove the emotion associated with that, and look at this like lab work. It's just lab work, and you're doing your labs so that you end up with your degree. And look at it less emotion, more logical. There is generally a lesson in the trials we have. Sometimes I don't learn them, but I'm a slow learner. But sometimes, when you come out the other side, you go, "This is better.
That's pretty
This
good.
is really better."
Let's read Daniel 1:8.
But Daniel resolved that he would not defile himself with the king's rich food, or with the wine which he drank. Therefore he asked the chief of the eunuchs to allow him not to defile himself.
And I think the context of this is even before things got deep into whatever they're going to do, Daniel made up his mind what he was not going to do. He and his friends were not going to bow down to idols, and they weren't going to eat. Here's what I think the food was like. It was probably super rich, super greasy, super oily, super decadent. Obviously, a lot of it was unclean meat. And the wine was too much wine, and maybe the wine was too sweet. Didn't that sound about what it was probably like?
Probably, and everything was cooked in lard.
Oh, yeah,
Well,
guys.
so probably lots of really pungent spices.
And I'm sure they had mussels and squirrels. Actually, there's a squirrels mentioned in one of those descriptions, but a lot of what we considered exotic foods. By the way, this is a historic fact worth mentioning. During part of the history of Europe, the peasants had to eat the whole wheat bread, and the upper royalty, upper class, they got to eat the bleach white, pure white flour and the more pure sugar. So when Antoinette said, if they don't have bread, let them eat cake. I realized that was part of the revolution, but actually they were hurting themselves with all that special expensive food.
By the way, we don't have John's video, but we still have his audio. So remember, he's still there.
You don't have my video?
I don't.
I see you, John.
Oh well, let me
Yeah,
try.
I
Let
see
me
you.
try something here, real quick.
Real quick.
You're bigger now.
It's all better. It's much better.
Okay. Well, what do you think, John, about the decadent food?
Well, yeah, I think they made their mind up ahead of time. They were going to do what they always did. If they could something that they were used to eating that they knew that got approved of, then they were just going to do without.
Yeah, and that to remember they were prisoners, and bad things could happen to them. If the right royal person was offended. And some people would have said that food is a minor issue. I can see someone saying, "Boy, your life is at stake, and you're worried about the food. This is rich food. Don't worry." Can you imagine somebody telling them that?
Right.
Well,
Yeah, it's not that important. It's just food.
I'm certain it was the most decadent party that they could imagine because that's who the people were. It's kind of the same attitude that Uriah had. He wouldn't sleep in with his wife, and he wouldn't sleep in a tent, and he said, "I'm sleeping in the field." God likes that kind of character, that kind of discipline, and I think those are good examples for us because the day may be coming that we have to make some hard decisions.
Where we maybe can't eat a lot of stuff we want to eat. We have to live on hardtack. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, but you never know, right?
I'm bulking up for it, just in.
Right.
You
I
be
noticed
quiet,
that
Dave.
actually. I'm right there with you, buddy.
Call me a prepper,
You know,
man.
it's hard to get rid of our body's reserve, and it sits right. Never mind.
It's not that hard. I lost 8 pounds in 2 weeks.
Wow.
You can't taste your food and you can't smell it. You don't want to eat it.
That's true. Yeah,
Oh, that's
COVID
right.
does
When
that
you
too.
had the virus,
Yeah, you
you
don't know my
you couldn't
wife.
taste your food.
Yeah.
So you don't have to taste it or smell it.
Eating paper. It just, yeah, it was no good. It didn't take nothing to lose 8 pounds.
Well, that's beneficial, right? Losing 8 pounds is normally a good thing for most people.
Yeah, well, it didn't hurt any.
And we believe Daniel clung, like you said, John, to do the things they had always done, even on little things like food, and God blessed them for it. When we stay faithful, little things and big things, God will bless us. By the way, if you look at that whole section around Jeremiah 24, he talks about the good figs. And obviously, there are a lot of bad figs because the whole country of Judah was apostatizing into idol worship and sending their children, burning their babies to idols, and a whole lot of the bad stuff. But there were some people in the nation of Judah that remained faithful. And let's look at Jeremiah 24:7.
I will give them a heart to know that I am the Lord, and they shall be my people, and I will be their God, for they shall return to me with their whole heart.
So he was preparing those people to remain strong, and then when they would come back from captivity, they'd come back strong. And well, in our case, of course, we will come back as part of God's family. We shall see how things go, but it is probable that somewhere in the near future, we were debating. I was debating it with one person. You remember Paul says there'll be a great falling away. And I said, it's got to be more than just the worldwide church of God apostatizing. It's got to be bigger than that. I think there's going to be a lot of people in this world falling away from a lot of truth that they now know. And we have to not get caught up in it, because that's the one thing that Daniel did. When Judah was apostatizing, he stayed faithful. And that's why he was in the first wave that got taken care of. And the rest, you don't even want to read about.
Well, you know, the scripture says, "He who endures unto the end, the same shall be saved." That's just another way of saying stay faithful.
And then Daniel had an additional trial that we probably don't think about much, but Daniel had a trial regarding regarding the dream. And the emperor was going to put all the wise men to death. And Daniel and his friends were among the younger ones, so they probably weren't in on the original meeting, didn't know all about it. But notice how Daniel handled it. Can you read Daniel 2:17 for us, please, Ken?
I will give them a heart to know that I am. Didn't I already read that?
Yeah.
All right. There we go. Then Daniel went to his house and made the matter known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, and told them to seek mercy of the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that Daniel and his companions might not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision of that night, and then Daniel blessed the God of heaven.
And I know that's just an obvious message that when you're in a trial, marshal all the people you know in God's church and have them pray for you, just like we're all going to be praying for David. And I've got some eye problems too, different kind of glaucoma. But pray for David's problems, and I think praying for somebody else has more power than praying for yourself. I mean, you should pray for yourself, of course, but doesn't that make sense, Ken?
Yeah, it does. It does. It's a lot less self.
You know, God wants us to be unselfish, so praying for somebody else. So they got all, of course, they were in some ways praying for themselves too, but he marshaled that extra fasting and prayer power, and they got the results that they wanted. Um, and for those who want to say, well, the book of Daniel, actually, the book of Daniel is a real problem for people who don't believe in the Old Testament of the Bible. His prophecies, especially in chapter 10 and 11, in erring accuracy that the critics say, well, the Jews must kept updating it, updating it, updating it. Realize how hard that would be with synagogues all over the world. For instance, not only did Daniel predict the Babylonian Empire would fall and who would take over, the Persians, he predicted like 2.5 centuries in advance that the Greeks, who weren't a threat at that time, would come out of nowhere and quickly take over everything. And then their leader would die and would divide into 4 pieces. Now you're going to say, there's no way Daniel could have known that short of inspiration. Plus, there's a lot of other details. But one thing also you can say about Daniel is Christ verified the authenticity of Daniel. Let's go to Matthew 24.
All right. So that when you see the desolating sacrilege spoken of by the prophet Daniel standing in the holy place, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains.
Yeah. So if you believe in Christ, you got to believe in Daniel, right?
As I understand it, in traditional Orthodox Judaism, they don't allow you to read the book of Daniel till after you're, I think, 33 years old. So they have an age restriction on Daniel.
Can you explain the logic of that? I mean, I knew.
I have an opinion. Is that they want to make sure that they taught you opposite of that before you get there, so they can explain it away. That would be my opinion. And what I can do is I have a friend who's a Jewish man, and he really studies. Like when he eats out, he will not eat any animal because it's not kosher. It's not been blessed. It's not been slaughtered the right way. So he's completely vegetarian when he eats out. At home, it's 100% kosher, or he won't eat it. I can ask him. He and his wife are very active in their synagogue, and I can ask him what the logic is behind that.
You know, the Jews are a mystery. And I'll admit that we could probably say that about some other nationality groups. The mystery of the Jews is that a lot of them are Jewish, and you know, they go to Passover and Atonement, usually those two only. A lot of them are secular, or they're kind of caught in a middle ground. They're very secular, very liberal. They don't want to believe in the Bible. They don't like some of their more Hasidic cousins, but yet they're still Jewish. It's almost like they're undermining their own book. I don't know. Does that make sense, David?
Well, here, can you be Jewish and an atheist? It's a very
They
fair
say
question.
yes.
Yes, because it's a tribe. You cannot be any kind of Christian or any kind of a Muslim and an atheist. But you can be Jewish and an atheist. So the culture is one thing and the religion is something else, but they've blended them. A lot of those cultural things are very beautiful and based on biblical ideas, like Hanukkah. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just not a holy day. So
Yeah.
you have more of them doing things for Hanukkah, because in some cases, and I told this to my Jewish friend, I said, we chose to not do Hanukkah growing up because my mother didn't want us to have Jewish Christmas. And she said, a lot of them do that. And, and it was funny because I said to Sandy, what do you think about us learning about Hanukkah and maybe doing some of those traditions? She says, no, I'm not doing Jewish Christmas. So I don't think I'd ever told her my mother said that. But,
I kind of agree. Yeah, we even thought once about doing Kwanzaa at Christmas, but somehow it just didn't seem right, so we didn't do it.
Yeah, if you know
because the
history of
kids
that.
are under pressure. This is when our kids were younger, many, many years ago. Christmas was really big around here and in public school, but they roughed it up. They roughed it out as the only kids that didn't keep Christmas. So anyway, it was tough on them, but they survived it.
I was always the only kid that didn't keep Christmas. Christmas is like the most angersome time of the year for me. And my students don't wish me, the new ones don't, but the old ones don't, don't bother him with wishing him a Merry Christmas,
But when people say Merry Christmas, of course, now we all just say thank you. We're not afraid of it. But I think earlier, when our kids were the only ones who didn't keep Christmas, I think it did make us too defensive on the thing. But that's all water under the bridge now. You all will be happy to know our new VP and maybe soon president keeps Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, and Christmas. She keeps all three. It has her all her entire life.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had to laugh.
I'm not making this up. That's what I heard on TV the other day. And I don't believe it, of course, but hey, what can I say? Good politician, be all things to all people, right?
She also, I'm sure,
Well,
keeps
she said she used
Ramadan
to
too.
smoke. Said she used to smoke pot and listen to some band when she was in college, but that band didn't come out until she'd been out of college for over a decade. So, I mean,
politicians exaggerate. I'm using a good word. Anyway, but here's another thing about Daniel that, boy, this is something we all need to learn. Even though Daniel stood up in the face of paganism, and you might say, and did the right thing, he was tactful. He was a man of tact, courage, and prudence. Let's go to Daniel 2:13 and 15.
All right. So the decree went forth that the wise men were to be slain. And they sought Daniel and his companions to slay them. Then Daniel replied with prudence and discretion to Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, who had gone out to slay the wise men of Babylon. He said to Arioch, the king's captain, why is the decree of the king so severe? And I know I butchered that.
Yes. That sounds pretty good to me. But notice, with tactfulness, boy, do you agree that can work on being more tactful?
Some of us more than others.
I don't have a clue what you're talking about. That was a little insulting, I think.
Just a. How do you know I was talking about?
I didn't. I was talking to Dr. Rick.
Oh, yeah, right.
The funny thing is, a lot of times I say something and what I'm saying is right, but the person, they don't admit it. Does that make any sense, John?
Yeah, I say that to people sometimes that you're hearing crooked.
Yeah.
I like that.
I asked
I like
a friend,
that, hearing crooked.
I asked a friend of mine, I said, did I do something upsetting back in October? He said, no. He said, you're so direct that if you called me an SOB, I wouldn't be offended. I'd say, wonder why, logic behind that, because he wouldn't do that without a logic, some kind of reasoning. He said, it wouldn't offend me. I'd have to figure it out, because if you did it, there's behind it. So I think the more direct you are, I don't understand nuance, all of the adult males in my life are very direct. Do that, boom, that was it. There was no subtlety. So
You probably are better than you think you are. That's what I think. But I do think most of us, at least many of us, we could say what we say in a way that doesn't put them on the defensive. In other words, you got to say it in a way that sounds like, I really appreciate your position. I appreciate what you just said, or I'm not attacking you or your beliefs, position. I just want you to think of, I don't know, we got to find a way to say it that doesn't seem like we're giving them a broadside.
Well, the minute you put them on defense, you've lost them. You can't get through to them once they're on their defense because they're not hearing what you're saying at that point.
And people, especially liberals, now I know that sounds biased, but I really believe especially liberals are so sensitive on some issues because they really can't defend it that well, but they still believe it or they're sensitive. If you just touch certain areas, they immediately get defensive. You all agree?
well, yes. Especially there's some subjects, abortion, gay rights, that kind of stuff, that if they're on the liberal side, if you make any statement sort of that you're not on that side, they start coming at you with everything they've got. So,
Or they don't want to talk. They will close up and run away or withdraw or, do you know what I'm saying, right?
Mhm.
yeah.
So we need to try to be more tactful like Daniel. I realized Daniel was facing some dangerous people and dangerous circumstances, but we still could learn from his tactfulness. And notice in Daniel 1:11, let's read that. And see, he was both tactful and I think he was smart.
Then Daniel said to the steward, whom the chief of the eunuchs had appointed over Daniel, "Test your servants for 10 days. Let us be given vegetables to eat and water to drink."
It seems to me that Daniel knew a basic principle. Anything God says don't do is good for you. So if God says don't eat all that uh, fat, and they probably had blood pudding and all that other decadent food, then it's not good for you. Just, if God says don't eat it, it's bad for you. So therefore, by not eating it, he knew they would be healthier.
There
And
are a couple.
I think God also blessed them in addition to that too.
There are a couple of churches in the area. Every year they do what they call the Daniel fast, and they go 40 days with nothing but water and raw fruit and vegetables. Well, it's probably a healthy thing to do. I'd never heard of that until I don't know, 5 or 7 years ago.
Have you heard of the Daniel fast, John?
I've heard of it before, probably 10 years ago or so, but I don't remember who it was or what church it was. But
Yeah, some friends of mine attend this other church, which they believe everything we do, other than they do memorized prayer and stuff like that. They did that, and the kids were telling groups of like homeschool kids that are parts of other churches, and the other churches of the world were doing it as well. So I'd never heard of that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Let's go to verse 13.
All right. Then let our appearance and the appearance of the youths who eat the king's rich food be observed by you, and according to what you see, deal with your servants.
It'd be hard for the guy in charge to say, well, that does sound logical, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Right? He can say, I'm going to force you to eat all this crappy, decadent food because look at how good those other guys are doing and how bad you all are doing. So, the logic, Daniel had good logic and tact. It made sense. By the way, um, that first empire, the Babylonian Empire, was the empire of gold. That means they did do some things right. And you can see it was a smart thing for the Babylonians to do. And you can see that the people in charge were logical. You can't always say that for some empires that came later. Um, so there are some good things you can say about it. And most of all, it pays to obey God. Um, Daniel also showed his unwavering faith in the lion's den. Um, the key part of the story is that his political rivals didn't like him being promoted over them because obviously Daniel was gifted by God and being blessed by God. And I'm sure now it's a different empire, same thing. The Persians were smart enough to realize this guy, Daniel's a good administrator. Let's use him. I mean, right? It'd be stupid to not use good talent, right? By the way, there's some people who are so petty, they don't use good talent just because, well, they're not one of my boys or whatever, and they hurt themselves. Some people are that dumb.
Jealous.
You were
Usually
going to say something,
jealousy.
Ken?
It's usually jealousy.
Or ego driven.
Say, yeah, exactly.
You know, it's hard, like in my business, to have assistant instructors and walk away and let them do it, let them teach, because you know, you constantly want to hang on to how good you are, you know, and I'm at the point where I'm training people to teach for me, so I'm not on my feet teaching as much.
And you're secure enough that you don't have to worry about them getting as good as you or better, right?
They'll never be as good as I was. That's an anomaly. They'll be good, but they won't be what I was.
I believe you. But you know, a lot of people are so insecure, like you said, they won't use good talent. And at least the emperor saw Daniel's talent. Well, the others got him to make this law. They appealed to his ego. You can pray to no other god but the emperor for so many days. And when Daniel heard about it, I'm sure he realized what they're up to. Um, well, let's read Daniel 6:10, then we'll talk about it. Because I think what Daniel did is really.
When Daniel knew that the document had been signed, he went to his house where he had windows in his upper chamber, went open toward Jerusalem, and he got down upon his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God as he had done previously.
Now, think about it. You realize technically Daniel could have gone to the basement where there are no windows and prayed to God, knowing that God could see him through the wooden walls, concrete walls, mud walls, whatever it was. The question is, why didn't Daniel do that? I think because he was more worried about offending God than he was offending the politicians in the Persian Empire, or dishonoring God. Maybe that's a better way of putting it.
Zig Ziglar says, I have no plans for retirement, because anytime in the Bible I see that someone is retired, they die. And Daniel may not have wanted an early retirement.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he wanted God to be on his side. I mean, I can see that. And I just think that's a great example of him honoring God, even with his life on the line.
Right, but he wasn't going to. He would take chances with his physical life, but that he would not take with his spiritual life.
Yes, as well as in wisdom. It takes courage, because I said he could have hidden, and he could say, "Well, God," or close the windows. God can see me through the windows. By the way, he faced Jerusalem because remember Solomon in his prayer said, "When my people face this building, or where the building used to be, and pray to me, you will hear their prayers and answer them." And so he prayed toward Jerusalem, and I'm sure God heard his prayers. Um, and as it turned out, the emperor realized he had been tricked and duped, and he wanted to rescue Daniel. But think about that. Daniel was such a upright guy that he got the king to be on his side and not on the side of his rivals. Would you like to read Daniel 6:14 for us, Ken?
Sure. Then the king, when he heard these words, was much distressed, and set his mind to deliver Daniel. Then the king commanded, and Daniel was brought in and cast into the den of lions. The king said to Daniel, May your God, whom you serve, continually deliver you. Then the king went to his palace and spent the night fasting. No diversions were brought to him, and sleep fled from him.
Yeah, that's how much the king wanted Daniel to survive. Uh, and, um, and he actually, when he got there in the morning, he said, Daniel, was your God strong enough to save you from the lions? He was so happy when Daniel answered. Daniel was quite safe with the lions. And you know what happened? He rounded up all those men who were opposing Daniel and their families, took Daniel out of the lions and put them in. And guess what? They didn't even reach the bottom of the lion's den before the lions disemboweled them.
Well, they were being teased all night long.
Yeah, no
It
kidding.
was food and they couldn't.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And can you imagine the political impact after Daniel? Any of the lesser political officials in the empire, I don't want to give Daniel any trouble. I saw what happened to those other guys.
Well, I'm
You
sure
know,
Daniel.
they probably slipped the animal, the people who took care of the animals probably slipped them a few extra bucks to keep them from eating the day before that they knew Daniel was going to get thrown in there.
Oh, yeah, so they'd be nice and hungry.
Yeah, they
Oh, I
probably
bet they
did, and
did,
they're
yeah.
probably the ones that they kept the lions hungry for. It's not
Yeah,
there,
they
but wouldn't
didn't
that
realize
be
it.
quite the turn?
They set up their own trap.
I'm certain Daniel let them sleep.
Yeah. Can you imagine Daniel sleeping on the mane of a big male lion
Yes.
as his
Well,
pillow?
I think that the animals, when Daniel had so much Holy Spirit in them, probably felt that. That or God gave them, he put them to sleep or something. When they went into Lot's house, he struck everybody with blindness. So I think that a miracle like any of those are possible.
Yep. And then let's go to the last scripture where Daniel is basically honored by
The king Darius wrote to all the peoples, nations, and languages that dwelt in all the earth. I make a decree that in all my royal dominion men tremble and fear before the God of Daniel, for he is the living God, enduring forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed, and his dominion shall be to the end. He delivers and rescues, he works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth. He who has saved Daniel from the power of the lions. So this Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian.
You realize that by Daniel remaining faithful, he actually witnessed to both the emperor of the Babylonians and the two emperors of the Persian Empire, because they taught the people Daniel's God is the real thing. That's quite something. By the way, the Persian Empire we might think of as old and ancient, but it included quite a few different nationalities and spoke quite a few different languages. So it's bigger than you might think. I mean, for its day and age, you might say the Middle Eastern part of Europe and Eurasia, anyway, that part of the world, and I guess Egypt as well. But that was a big empire with a lot of languages, a lot of cultures. It's the second of the world ruling empires that existed, and And God did all that because Daniel had courage, faithful, and he was tactful. And we can learn a lot. And he prepared himself. By the way, I want to just mention something. The next 2 or 2.5 weeks, if America is to be saved from radicals who might change America in ways that we may not be able to alter, will be crucial. So now is the time to step up our prayer for America. Now, I don't know what God plans on doing. Will he give us the government we deserve? I hope not. But I heard one guy speculating. This is pure speculation, and I admit it could be wrong. He says the problem with China and America, if the Chinese believe that Biden is in their pocket because they bribed him and his family, and they can do anything they want, and America will stand. In other words, they and other bad actors like Iran and Russia and a few others believe that America now has a compromised, weak government. They might go too far, do something they shouldn't do, and then we're going to have big trouble in the world. You know, the more I thought about it, you would think a strong man like Trump would cause trouble.
No.
But sometimes a strong man is the one that prevents trouble. When you look weak or compromised is when you have trouble. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I could also see Biden won't be in office for any amount of time whatsoever. A week, a month, I don't know, not long. Kamala, we don't know whether or not she's in anybody. I mean, I'm sure she's in somebody's pocket, but we don't know that the Chinese have bought her off. If when she's all of a sudden in charge, we could also have a lot of trouble because if she's not been bought off, who knows what kind of garbage she could pull. So it could be real interesting after this next few weeks. I hope it ain't. I hope
Kim,
something works out where the 6th everything goes down the way we kind of hope it will. And even if it does, best case scenario, got a major problem in all the cities where Antifa and BLM are, because we're going to have major upheavals there. That's the best case scenario. Worst case scenario, the United
Yeah.
States ceases to exist as we know it.
Oh,
Well, one thing, I think this is true. If the liberals take over, they will cut the defense budget drastically. And yet, anyway, I still think the guy who predicted that, Gordon Chang, he said weakness in them thinking they can do anything they want may cause trouble. You know, the opposite of what you think. The Chinese may get too emboldened, go too far, and something will go wrong. Like invading Taiwan. Oh, there's some other possibilities he kicked out there. And he says they're actually making preparation for invading Taiwan. And well, we will see. It may well be, no matter what happens, certain bad things will happen no matter what happens. But I do think the next 2.5 weeks are crucial for America.
Oh, they are for sure.
And maybe for the whole
Oh,
world. Oddly
whatever
enough,
happens
maybe
to
for the whole
America, the
world.
whole world will either reap or die because of it. It's not going to be good for anybody if we go down.
Like, for instance, they think that when Britain gets out of that they'll make a great trade deal with America. But I don't know if the Biden administration, with their ties to China, will be so eager to do that.
Right.
I mean, you see the possibilities, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
And more American jobs may go back to China. They were coming the other way. They may go back now. I mean,
well, if you think this mask mandate's ever going away under Biden, it's never going to go away.
it'll get worse. It will get worse. So all I can say is pray for America. The next 2 weeks are crucial. And the devil is clever. You can see him, can't you? Moving all the pieces in place to get what he wants.
Yep.
And we need a big intervention by God. By the way, next week, the week Next, we're going to talk about the goats and how not to be a spiritual goat. And that's from some verses in Matthew 25. But I want to encourage everybody to be here next week.
I want someday to be an old goat.
All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. We had a large crowd tonight, larger than average, and we appreciate that. Next week, if everything goes right, I'll have fiber optic cable here for the internet. So I will have the fastest internet you can possibly have. Should improve show quality quite a bit. So if everything goes all right next Friday, we should have the best looking show we've ever had. So if everyone have a happy Sabbath, I hope. And don't forget to check out the new intercontinentalcog.org site. And we'll see you all again here next week. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
We're happy you could make it, and so glad you are here, and hope that we've been able to make God's word more clear. Until next time, may God be with you in everything you try. But for now, till next week, we have to say goodbye.